As always, appreciate you guys joining us today. Short week, we had to get this thing turned around pretty quickly. Today is the equivalent of a Wednesday practice for us, and so our guys got in Sunday. We practiced Sunday night, which was a Monday practice, and then yesterday, Tuesday, today obviously Wednesday. We're well past looking back. The Charlotte game, the thing I would say in reference to that game is that obviously, the things we needed to do to win the game were necessary, but they won't be sufficient. And what I mean by that is that, we did some things, we showed character, we overcame adversity, all things that are necessary, but they won't be sufficient for us to be able to get the type of wins and go to where we want to go as a team. And so we put the Charlotte game behind us pretty quickly. It was good to see our guys respond the right way. Obviously, Virginia is a familiar foe, a former ACC rival. Having been here at Maryland for over 15 seasons and been a part of some of those games, they're important games for us. And if you look at the type of scheduling we've tried to do, this game is in great alignment with how I'd like to see us schedule. Obviously, being in the Big Ten is a tough enough conference, but we do have some historical rivals that are always great for our fans to have the opportunity to compete against, and Virginia is one of them. And I know our fans are pretty passionate about that rivalry. Going into this game, I'm looking for us to clean up some of the mistakes that showed up early. We're a team that operates better when we play with great pace, when we start fast, and a week ago we didn't, and so we want to try to get that corrected, and we want to focus on coming out with the right type of energy and the right type of enthusiasm Friday night here in the Shell, and again, I'm hoping that we have an electric environment that our players can feed off of, that extra element of having a loud crowd here supporting us. Friday night gives us another opportunity to continue our quest to show that we're not the same old Maryland, and I know our players are excited once again to be able to play in front of a national TV audience here at home, and it again puts the university at the forefront where everyone across the country has an opportunity to see just what a great place we have here in the DMV. Our game captains this week, Emilio Moran, Kobe Thomas, and Tarheeb Steele will lead us. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Good afternoon, Mike. Anthony Colandrea, their freshman quarterback, in his first start last Saturday, threw for almost 400 yards. What have you guys seen on tape? What makes him special?
Yeah, he's a little bit like a young Leah. He's one of those guys that extends plays. He's, he continues to. He doesn't give up on plays. You saw him make some big plays for them. Obviously, a week ago, as a true freshman, to see what he was able to do was pretty impressive. Musket may be back, so we're kind of preparing for both of those guys. But I was really impressed with the true freshman out of Florida with how he was able to come in and kind of provide a spark for them.
Hey, Mike, a two-parter for you. The first, you mentioned a little bit in your opening remarks, just the significance for you of renewing the rivalry in terms of the health and enthusiasm of college football in the DMV. And the second part is, how well have you gotten to know Tony Elliott over the years, and how would you kind of characterize the relationship, given you both have been offense coordinators at high-profile schools previous?
Yeah, obviously, the first one is the rivalry and what it means and the health of it. Well, much like playing West Virginia, who's a longtime rival of the University of Maryland, UVA is one of those games as well. And I know our fans get excited, especially when they're our old ACC foes, to have the opportunity to compete against them. And I know we do it in some of our other sports here. So to be able to have this game on our schedule was something that I wanted. Obviously because of the proximity and because of some of the history behind this game. As far as my relationship with Tony, I've gotten to know Tony really well. Obviously, my time at Alabama, him at Clemson, we got to know each other there. He won the Broyles Award the year before I won, so he was there to present it to me, and then also had the opportunity through the coalition. He was part of our first academy where we paired qualified minority assistants with athletic directors across the country and to mentor, and Tony was part of that first academy, and hopefully the coalition, in my opinion, played a small role in helping prepare him for the opportunity he has now. And so a lot of respect for Tony and the program he has. His offensive coordinator, Des Kitchens, is also a guy that has been part of the coalition, and he's part of the academy that we have this year. And so been really impressed with the way he's managed his team through some of the tragedy they had a year ago. And, Tony's one of those all-around good guys.
Hey there, Coach. You talk
up,
about
Charlotte?
wanting that electric atmosphere, that electric environment. Do you notice a difference in the way your players play when you have a packed house and when they're hearing and feeding off those fans?
I don't notice it in the moment, but when you go back and we evaluate the game and I kind of evaluate how we started, you get a feeling of the impact of what the crowd can have. We try to prepare our team to not allow external things be the motivation behind it, but it sure feels good to run out in the first quarter and see a packed student section like we saw the first week. And I was impressed with the student section even through the pregame weather that we faced this past weekend. And I'm hoping Friday night is one of those electric atmospheres which allows us to really put our best foot forward. Those things have more impact than the non-football things, recruiting, and those other areas. Putting us at the forefront on national TV, so it shows really well, and I'm hoping that we can, have that type of crowd and that type of energy.
Hey, Coach.
What's up, Sean?
Obviously, this rivalry, it's not like what it was before, but can you kind of think back for us and kind of give us some insight on, when this rivalry was really cooking back in the day, what did it feel like the week of a UVA-Maryland game?
Yeah, I mean,
what were those games like?
They were, during my time, I was here obviously as a youngster out in the parking lots of back then Byrd Stadium when Virginia came into play, and it was always one of those games that it was competitive. I can remember being here in, I want to say 1999, when we had a chance. We were 5-6, and we played them here at home, and Lamont Jordan, I think, broke the record here, had over 300 yards rushing in a game, and we end up losing. Billy McMullen catching the fade in the left corner of the end zone to win the game and end our bowl opportunities. And I know when Coach Friedgen got here, being part of his staff, the hatred that he had for UVA was real. And I haven't talked to him this week yet, but I'm sure that he still, gets pretty pumped up about it. So, for me as a coach, hearing Ralph talk about it obviously showed me just how important a game it has been. And so I expected, when I had a chance to put them on a schedule, it was something that I thought would be good for this area and for our program.
Do you still feel that hatred?
Yeah, I mean, it's a rivalry. I mean, give it the respect that it deserves. I mean, there's been a lot of history, a lot of years of that game, and I've got respect for those type of games. And there's no doubt that it's still a rivalry, but more for our fans than it is for us because of us being part of the Big Ten now.
Hey, Locks, back here. Bringing up those memories, I know we're getting to the point now where some of the players might not even barely remember Maryland in the ACC. Has there been some discussions this week about, hey, this means a lot to the fans? Like, how are you kind of relaying that to the players on this team about the rivalry?
Yeah, because of the quick turnaround, I had to use my time wisely, and so for us, it's the next opponent. We didn't put, any more things into the preparation. Now, as we finish up here, as we get closer to game time, obviously, we have meetings where we talk a little bit about the opponent, and, we had our scouting report stuff, which we tried to, again, because of how quick the turnaround was for us. But our players will understand it, and I think they'll have a better feel for it once the ball kicks off.
And then one more for you real quick. I know you've mentioned a couple times, you always talk about the standard of starting fast. Is there a certain way you guys have emphasized that or are going to emphasize that in practice next week to prepare for a fast start this Friday?
Being able to start fast goes back to our players and the consistency. One of the things that jumped out to me is that some of the things that showed up in our lack of a fast start showed up in practice a week ago. And so for the emphasis for us, we talk about on the offensive side of the ball, one of the things I thought we struggled with in the Charlotte game early was just getting lined up and trying to be able to play at the pace that we feel most comfortable playing at. And, you know, when you got guys not lined up at the right place and we're yelling from the sideline or the right people aren't in there, those things are the things that kind of slowed us down. And so we put an emphasis on to be able to start fast. Usually simplicity needs to be part of it. And so, again, we want to simplify and make sure that we are very clear as to what it is we want to get accomplished in all three phases. And to me, that's what allows you to play fast.
Oh, Mike, you know how productive you guys can be on the ground. Is there a sense of maybe relying on the ground game to help settle the offense in the early stages of a game?
Again, you know, whether we run it or throw it, you know, we've shown efficiency at being able to do both at times. And I just think it comes back to being able to do both really well. You know, we're not a team that, from an identity standpoint, that goes in and says, hey, we want to be a run team or we want to be a throw team. We want to be the team that does both of them really well, and when the defense presents certain structures, have that ability to take advantage of it. And, you know, we were able last week, I thought, because of the tempo we started playing with after we kind of got going, to wear down Charlotte a week ago, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it will be sufficient for us this week. And so the goal is for us to be good at both throwing the ball and running the ball and protecting the ball and creating explosive plays on offense.
Hey, Mike.
George, what's up?
Not much. You were here the last time in 2013 when Maryland last played Virginia, and, you know, fourth quarter comeback, Caleb threw for over 300 yards and everything. You've talked about your experience with the rivalry. I wonder, for kids who now in an age of conference realignment, 10 years on, maybe don't necessarily have those same ties, do you or anybody else kind of impart some words of wisdom to how much this meant to the program and to the fan base and to the area?
You know what, you generally do, but as I've said earlier, this turnaround was one. You play 7:30 at night. We obviously didn't play real well. I think I got to bed around 4 o'clock Sunday morning, just in time to wake up and go to church. And then, you know, it's getting this game put to bed by 3 o'clock, and then game planning from 4 to 6:30 or whenever we had our team meeting to be ready for practice. So haven't had a lot of time to do the history of it, but what we're trying to do is clean up some of the things that showed up in game 2 for us to make sure our team's prepared to play really well. As I said, when we get closer to the later part of our preparation, you know, the Friday before game is when we kind of have a motivational talk, and I'm sure there'll be some things to explain just how important this game is to a lot of people. This generation is not growing up on rivalries because of the realignment, and it's just where we are today in the landscape of college football. But we'll try to do our part to make sure our players understand that, number one, it is the next opponent, but this one is something pretty special to a lot of people.
Mike, circling back on the run game a little bit, I know it's a small sample size, but Virginia's had some issues this year stopping the run. They're last in the ACC. You guys were able to crank it up against Charlotte. How much do those opponents factor into your game planning?
It factors in. We look to see what the weaknesses are and try to attack them. You know, but again, they know what their fleas are as well, and much like us, we look to see when we self-scout what things we don't do well, understanding that people are going to try to attack it, and so each week you work to improve in the areas that you aren't strong in. So I would imagine they've been working on trying to stop the run game. For us, obviously, to be able to do both is still optimal for how we want to play on offense. You know, balance is not running at 50% or throwing at 50%. It's being able to do both very efficiently, and you know, we still haven't had one of those games where they both have really tied together, and hopefully we can put one together this week.
Hey, Coach.
What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good.
So I've noticed that, especially in the secondary and the defensive line, you guys have kind of been versatile with the defense. I know Bo and Dante have kind of worked both in the box and out of the box, and then you guys have used a lot of guys in the interior and then over a tackle. Is that something you kind of focus on both in recruiting and then with the game plan?
So the question you're asking is using the multiple players, or is it multiple
with the versatility
schemes?
of players. Is that something you focus on both in recruiting?
Yeah, you have to. In this day and age, you know, with people playing with tempo, especially on the defensive side of the ball, how it affects defenses. We saw a week ago the effect our tempo had maybe on Charlotte in the second half. And, you know, you're good players. You want those guys playing really strong in the fourth quarter. And so, you know, B-Dub and the defensive staff has done a really good job of rotating players. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that, the reason guys transfer typically is because they don't play, and so we try to find and create roles for all the players in our program, whether it be on special teams, offense, or defense. And so, and because of the type of program we are, we're always trying to develop, and you don't develop your players on the bench. And so we try to find ways to create roles that allow each player to have some ownership in our program. And when we're able to do that, that's where I find us at our best.
Hey, Coach. Good to see you. I know that going into the Charlotte game, you had mentioned the offensive line obviously wouldn't be playing as many players as they did in Week 1, but there was 8 different players that played this week. But I guess kind of how would you assess kind of going into Week 3, how that unit's kind of gelling together a little bit?
Coming along good, coming along as expected. The more they play, the better they will be. We kind of made a change there at the center position, and we continue to create competitiveness there, which I think makes us better. I saw both Eric and Mike Purcell get better a week ago at the center position. Didn't play as many than we played, obviously, the way that game played out. But we thought going into it, we wanted to try to lock in and see what that unit looked like playing consistently together. That's one of those groups that when you're substituting in there, you don't necessarily get a good feel for the gel and how they complement each other. And so, we're getting some guys back healthy this week and expect Gotti to be able to play for us, and that adds another element and gives us a chance to continue to evaluate.
Hey, Coach. With it being a Friday game, does that change anything for you guys with regarding to recruiting, just because players who might be able to visit now have their games to play?
Not really. We invite the kids. This area, we do have kids that maybe play on Saturday, and so those guys typically, Friday night, they want to be off their feet. It is what it is. Yeah.
And then with Jayshon Barham, 2 sacks, has there ever been a discussion with you guys about potentially moving him full-time to being an edge rusher?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Coach, one of the players stepping up in the secondary there is true freshman Alex Moore. Obviously, he was able to save that touchdown and kind of help force the interception there at the end against Charlotte. What have you seen from him so far, and what sort of gotten him on the field so quick?
Yeah, he was able to save a touchdown that he should have prevented the big play from happening. And that's what we've seen is, as a young player, he's shown spurts of being able to be a guy that we can count on. But he's going to have some mistakes that happen that just come along with being developed. And, I would say he probably played better in Game 1 than he did Game 2. He got a little nicked up in Game 1, so it's really his first game playing banged up, and he's starting to learn that, every week you got to bring the A game. But, Alex, he's one of those guys, David Wingate. I got to give, Pilati, those 2 guys coming from Pilati have been impact freshmen for us, and I've been pleased to see the way those guys have played for us.
Hey, Coach. It seems like Caden Prather's kind of already become one of Talia's favorite targets. You've noted before kind of the downfield big play abilities he has. Just what have you made of their connection so far, and what does he provide for an offense as that deep threat?
Yeah, I think Leah makes friends with all those receivers because they all know that if they want the ball, they want to make friends with them. Caden's no different. Jayshon Jones, I think, led us with 7 targets. I think Caden had 5. Much like on the defense, we try to be diverse with how we spread the ball around. Obviously, Caden's one of those guys that when we game plan, we say, hey, how can we get Caden involved to have a positive impact on the game because of the skill he has, and I think he's shown it the last couple of weeks, and we're hoping that he continues to get better, and as the chemistry develops between him and the quarterback, we'll see consistency in that big play ability.
My question was a little similar to Varun's, but how does the short week kind of affect game prep in general, or getting the team ready?
I think the biggest way it affects is that I don't get a lot of sleep, so I get a little cranky by the end of the week because, burning both ends of the candle. Like I said, a late Saturday night game. Luckily for us, we didn't have to travel back. We tried to let our players sleep in, and we pushed everything back about an hour or two Sunday, which gave us a little more time as a staff to get the film graded, to get all the quality control reports done so we can put Charlotte to bed and then proceed, obviously, into game planning. Fortunately, we have the type of staff or enough staff that we can do a lot of the prep work early. So some of the younger coaches in our program maybe started on UVA, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a week ago, just so that we could turn it around pretty quickly. But for us, today's Wednesday, and I know all you guys are looking at me like I'm crazy because it's Tuesday, but this is Wednesday, and our players are seeing it that way, and Friday will be Saturday. So we try to keep it consistent with our weekly prep, and just know that the players lost the day of rest where they typically Sunday is their day off. They'll go 13 straight days before they get a break, which will be this Saturday.
Take 2 more. Kind of building on that, do you like the change of pace of Friday night games, or
no?
You much prefer the routine of Saturday?
I am a creature of habit, as most coaches are, but I understand the benefit of it. So do I like it? No. Do I understand the benefit of us playing on Friday night, national TV? Yeah, so the benefits outweigh maybe some of the things that it affects in terms of how we prepare.
Yeah, Coach, as someone who probably knows the Tagovailoa family as well as anybody, Tua's developed into one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, or certainly the hottest. Talk about Leah compared to his brother, similarities. Do you see the same kind of growth? Just curious.
Yeah, they're 2 totally different personalities. I've been on the record as saying, Tua's one of those guys that's a people pleaser. He's a guy that, he's going to play really well when he knows that the people around him, relationships are important. And not for Leah as if he doesn't care about relationships, but Leah's a whole different type of animal. Leah's a really emotional, aggressive, I don't know if he's not one of those guys that when he walks into the room that everything lights up. He's kind of one of those guys that comes into the room, figures out what he needs to do, gets it done, and then he's out. So 2 different personalities, but when you look at the quarterback play of those 2, both really accurate passers, both great footwork, both have the ability to extend plays. I think Leah's maybe able to scramble around a little bit better, maybe a little extend plays a little better and become more of a runner, whereas Tua is one of those guys that gets it out quick and he extends plays in the pocket. But the one common denominator is Nalu Tagovailoa, the dad who has raised both those guys to be quarterbacks. They had great foundational training at the position, and you see both of them having great success wherever they've been.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Hope you're getting right there. It's going to come up to the